Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How Technology Can Make or Break Your Patient Care. I'm Andrew Donlin, a reporter at Home Healthcare News, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we begin and I turn this conversation over to our panelists, I just wanted to go over a few quick housekeeping items and give you all some background on our experts for this conversation. First, please note that your audio lines have been muted to ensure sound quality. Also, we will be taking questions throughout the webinar, so please do write those in the question box, and we're going to make sure to get to some of those at the end, hopefully all of them. Also, please note that the webinar is being recorded, and we will share copies of the audio and slides following its conclusion. And then lastly, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's webinar, Skedulo, for bringing this all together. Now for some background on our panelists. We have David Von Tress, the Vice President of Scheduling Solutions at AccentCare. David has been at AccentCare for 10 years in multiple roles and recently started in his new position. We have Melissa Fischer, the COO at NurseRegistry. Melissa has been part of the NurseRegistry team since 2012 and loves seeing the wide variety of opportunities that the field of nursing has to offer. Melissa completed her LVN course of studies at Unitech College after a 10-year career in business management. She also holds her BA in Visual Art and Women's Studies from Oberlin College. Melissa spends as much of her free time as possible with her husband, 3 amazing kids, and crazy dog. Michael Gleason, our last panelist, is the Director of Product Marketing at Skedulo. Michael serves the evolving need for deskless productivity and help champion the 2.7 billion strong deskless workforce. Outside of work, Michael enjoys his lifelong passion of playing music and getting outdoors for hikes, climbs, and rides of all kinds. And David has promised to make up for the lack of color in his bio with more color in the panelist discussion. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Michael to get this discussion started.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Excited to get into today's conversation. And I didn't know Melissa went to Oberlin College. I went to Marlborough College, so fellow kind of crunchy Northeast school connection there. Our collection of Birkenstocks must rival one another's. But we can get right into the content today. So the first question we were going to explore was really around the strategic priorities and some of the associated measures for your respective organizations. And to kick us off, we were going to look to David to add some color there.
Great, thanks, Michael. So our company, our cornerstones have always been about our patients, right? They're our top priority. And so really everything that we're doing in terms of strategic priorities is centered on our patients, the care that they receive, the care journey that they're on. And certainly outcomes specifically to our patient priorities are around patient satisfaction and the quality outcomes that we're able to achieve through our care delivery. And our second key cornerstone is certainly our people, right? We're a people business, and our people are the front line that are working with our patients to deliver the quality care that they deserve. So we're really committed to being an employer of choice, and certainly the key metric around there is around retention. How do we attract talent, but how especially do we keep that talent from leaving? So those are really our key cornerstones for our organization. And a lot of my role is how do we make these various initiatives cohesive to really tackle these top 2 priorities for our organization.
Yep, that makes complete sense to me, particularly the employee piece, having recently read that attrition is a huge problem in home health care, and the average tenure at a home health care organization is along the lines of 14 months. So I'm sure at AccentCare it's much longer than that, and part of the reason is that mentality. So Melissa, same question for you, strategic priorities and some of the associated measures for your world at NurseRegistry.
So in the midst of a huge software transformation, actually, and that's been our big priority lately. So as a nurses registry, we have been focused on finding great opportunities for our nurses and good resources for our clients. And working on this giant software implementation has really allowed us to focus not just on the operational things that will help us support both of those pieces equally, but also with our marketing department, being able to pull out certain pieces of information that have been super, super helpful for them that we historically haven't been able to do. So it's been a tremendous help for us in both supporting nurses, finding them the right opportunities, making sure that they're getting what they need, as well as meeting our clients' needs.
Perfect. Makes complete sense to me. And then sticking with Melissa, over your time in this space, how have you seen your space change? Of course, nurse registry being a little different than home health care segment, specifically in that you match nurses to a number of opportunities for them to serve private needs, institutional needs, I believe, et cetera. So how have you seen that space change in your time at nurse registry?
It's changed tremendously. It's always a little bit in flux with the nursing pool and the candidates. We are fairly focused on the state of California, and just seeing the amount of nurses, the number of nurses who are interested in working in the gig economy, because that's kind of where we land, is nurses who are wanting to pick up additional things on top of their regular jobs. As you mentioned, we do work with both private individuals and institutions, and the balance of those has shifted over time. We've had times where it's primarily private people who are reaching out to us, and times when it's primarily institutions who are reaching out to us. And again, it's trying to get that nurse pool that matches what the clients are asking for, and again, making it so that these nurses are finding fulfilling opportunities. That's what they need for this moment in their career.
Terrific. And even in our initial conversations, I was less familiar with the opportunity out there for private individuals to hire nurses to either provide care to supplement existing care opportunities that they currently have. So that was an eye-opening point of view for me. And then David, as you said, squarely in the home health space, how have you seen that industry change and the growth in that space as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Melissa's saying about just the nursing pool and really attracting talent is so important. The demographics of our population, the silver tsunami, and the baby boomers are now moving into our key demographic. It's a large population to serve, and the clinical professionals that we are wanting to attract certainly have many opportunities to work in a number of different fields in and out of healthcare, and certainly whether you're in delivery or otherwise. However, definitely what we're seeing is more consolidation. AccentCare is certainly participating in that, has been over the last several years. But I definitely have seen a trend towards more rationalization in the market, more consolidation. There are, I'm sure as Melissa can attest, a lot of both state-based and federal regs that have made operations more and more challenging, right? And trying to lean into economies of scale. How do we leverage technology and other best practices to get more value operationally and to maximize the talent that you have and those operating efficiencies. So certainly moving into a larger construct where you have more resources available affords you the ability to invest in areas to drive more operational leverage. But that certainly takes time and energy to pull off. So, but definitely I think the consolidation has been kind of an ongoing trend, and don't see that stopping anytime soon.
Definitely. And you mentioned the silver tsunami. I've never heard that term before, but I'm assuming it refers to the sheer density of the aging population that then will put a strain on the care system.
Absolutely.
I like that one. silver tsunami. I'm taking that. So speaking of highly dynamic marketplace, how do you differentiate against other organizations in that increasingly competitive space, David?
Yeah, for sure. So, AccentCare prides itself on its quality outcomes. That's something that we believe and have proven to be really a top priority, as I mentioned at the beginning. And so, the ability to bring, again, best practices around training and education, certain the tools that people use, so that we can set ourselves up for success and give that patient, the best care possible to drive those outcomes. And so that's certainly, something that we pride ourselves on and have seen that as a differentiator. As I mentioned as well, growing through acquisition and the scale that we're able to start achieving, right, helps to give us the platform to attract and keep talent, but also deliver innovation in a way that may not be afforded to smaller players. That being said, one of the cultural elements that I think is a differentiator for AccentCare is we still have retained somewhat of that entrepreneurial spirit, right? We try to push the envelope where appropriate in terms of what is possible. What are some ideas that maybe are outside of our specific industry or space that might make sense in our space, and in having a leadership team that really is willing to support efforts to try something new and see what works. And so definitely that entrepreneurial culture has been a big focus for us, and I think has allowed us to be very competitive. And then secondly, and finally, is our focus on our patient and their experiences. Again, it's more than just an MR number. These are real people. Every issue that comes in, every request, every call, there's a life on the other side. And so really, how do we, again, make this a very, as we grow and as we scale, I'll always recognize that there is a person on the other side of that, and not losing sight of their experience. And is their experience something that is positive, is going in the right direction or not? And how do we learn from the feedback that we receive? So certainly that's, again, a big focus is, are we listening to the customer, and are we tailoring our platform, our processes, our technology to what we're hearing in the market? And again, we believe by doing that effectively, we will continue to be competitive and to be able to differentiate ourselves in our space.
Yep, that makes complete sense to me. And actually, in our initial conversation, I found it refreshing that it's as simple as the quality of experience for both the people at the end of the care you're providing, but also the individuals providing that care, and then layering on top of that this DNA of innovation that's inherent to your organization that does come top down, but it's just part of who you are as an organization or a company. Something very refreshing about that. It's almost as if there's no tricks, there's nothing clever you can do, there's no smoke and mirrors. Just provide excellent care, provide a good employee experience, and try to foster that sense of innovation, which then translates into, in part, investments in technology. So Melissa, same thread. How do you think about differentiating your organization in what is a different but also dynamic marketplace?
So we do occupy kind of a unique space as a nurses registry, as a staffing agency, essentially, in the home health world. We work with home health agencies like David's on a client basis to help solve their staffing needs, but we also work directly with private duty clients who are looking for an extra layer of support. And I think that's what differentiates us, is that we are very much outside of the box of here's what your insurance covers, here's what home health covers, the black and whiteness sometimes of what that might seem like to a patient discharging home from the hospital. So that's I think that that's what makes us stand out, is that we are able to communicate that with people and let them know that whether it's through their, we provide them information through case managers at the hospital, or if they hire private care managers, or even through, again, home health organizations that can provide them information about how they can layer in support, just to help move them through the process, because we all experience these things differently. So we do occupy a very unique space in the home health world. And then again, because we have our staffing side as well, it really does help us to see all sides of it. And again, back to what David said, it really does just come down to making sure you're supporting your clients in the way they want to be supported, and making sure that the nurses are getting the opportunities they want. That's day in, day out what we're trying to accomplish.
Yep. And there's been a good amount of days in and out for both of you. You both have formidable tenures at your respective organizations. So when you think about way back when you did start at your respective organizations, what do you wish you knew when you started, or what do you wish others in the space that you occupy knew today? And we can start with Melissa.
So when I started at Registry, we were fully a nurse-based organization, and I mean that from front to back. So all of our office staff was nurse-based. Even the gal who helped and came in with our accounting was a nurse, just because that was our pool that we were working with. Hey, do you want to come and help with this stuff as we're growing? And again, as we've scaled and as we've grown, that has changed a little bit, but we have remained very nurse focused. As a leader of the organization, I'm a nurse myself. We still have nurses on staff working with both of our clients and our nurses, because that rapport, that nurse to nurse rapport, is very important. And we have found that historically, we leaned on that a lot. I think that if I could go in the Wayback Machine and change something, I would probably say I would have embraced technology a little bit more. There's always been kind of app-based gig options out there, and we've really sought to differentiate ourselves with that, with our nurse focus, that our clients know that they can expect that level of service. But as we're doing it now, and I'm seeing how transformational it has been in even just those foundational aspects of providing support to our nurses, it's been wonderful. So I think if I had a do-over, that would that would be one of them.
Yep, that makes sense to me, although I'd rather start with the foundation of being kind of nurse first and then layering on the technology part.
It's worked well. We've done okay. So yeah, it's worked out.
Okay, terrific. And just to drill into that a bit more, Melissa, when you think about technology in general, and we don't have to discuss Skedulo too heavily, but just in general, what that investment looks like, how do you think about that investment? Are there buckets or categories of technology? Are you trying to pattern match technology investments to key growth opportunities within the business? How do you start to break that technology investment down a bit?
So it's funny, because we actually did kind of start with Skedulo. We were a little frustrated with the end-to-end system that we were using, and wanted to have something that was that would improve the efficiencies of our team, and again might have some fun bells and whistles that our nurses would appreciate as well. And with launching Skedulo, it has just ballooned into a giant organization-wide software project for us, because we have so much more capability now. And again, it just, every question leads to 1,000 more, and 1,000 more solutions that can help improve our efficiencies, and at the end of the day, how we're supporting everybody who relies on us.
Terrific. And then David, similarly, what do you wish you knew when you started way back when, or simply what do you wish others in the space knew that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, so this coming to AccentCare was really my first foray into healthcare, and I'm not a nurse, but I've learned a lot, and I would agree with Melissa completely. It is about the nurse first, and so I think really trying to get inside of how a clinician thinks has been one of the, it's been a learning curve for me, but I think the faster you can get there, the better you can deliver processes and tools to support the field, obviously. And And I just so appreciate our clinical staff. I mean, our frontline workers who oftentimes are in very dangerous environments, especially when you think about COVID and all of that we've gone through. They are heroes, and you really want to do everything possible to make their lives safe and make their lives and the work that they do effective, and let them, again, as Melissa said, really expand and get excited about the care, why they came into healthcare in the first place. Take some of that stuff out of the way that sometimes gets in the way, some of the administrative burden. So I think, again, what I've learned over these years is how to best do that, right? What are the areas and the specific needs of the clinician, and how do you come alongside and make their life easier? But again, if you don't have the provider, you don't have the business, and so it's all about the provider. And the quicker you can get into that provider mindset, I think that's going to set you up for success.
Yep, that makes sense. And then maybe exploring that a bit more, how do you guys capture that feedback from the field? Is that an organic process? Have you established more formal sessions or feedback mechanisms to gather that perspective? Because we all know it is so important.
Yeah, we have a number of different channels. We do have a council of clinicians that bring feedback from a lot of different perspectives. We also do focus groups. We do surveys. So there's a number of ways that we work to tap into where our clinicians are at. Certainly, when someone leaves the organization, to the extent that we can do exit surveys and really understand, what was driving that decision. And so just really learning from all of those data points, connecting the dots and the stories around, okay, how do we improve for the next time, right? How do we prevent one person from leaving, unexpectedly? What can we learn from that?
Yep. What about you, Melissa? How do you keep in touch with folks in the field, although it seems like your organization is kind of communicative enough that that's not too much of a challenge, and a number of the folks on the leadership team, including yourself, have a background in care providing themselves. I'm sure that helps.
Absolutely. Like I said, the nurse-to-nurse rapport is important, especially this year. It's been a tough year for nurses. So figuring out where they want to be and what they're capable of, holding in this moment has been tough, again, because we live in the gig economy world. And so if nurses are working tremendous amount of hours at their current job, then they may just not have the emotional or physical bandwidth to take on extra things. So with us, it's very much, we do rely heavily on surveys to stay connected with our nurses, to know what their, pain points are, and same with our clients. We've won Best in Staffing Awards 2 years in a row, thanks to surveys. So we love them, but I really think that it's important to talk one-on-one with our nurses as much as possible. David had mentioned the phrase entrepreneurial spirit earlier, and as a registry working with nurses who are actively pursuing additional work, is you have to find nurses with that entrepreneurial spirit. And so talking to them and getting information on what they found rewarding about working with a particular client, what were their challenges when you went to this one facility, again, because a lot of times institutions call us in times of chaos. And again, especially this year, when they have no nurses on the floor and need a nurse, that nurse who shows up may not be supported in the way that he or she needs to be. So making sure that we get that feedback from our nurses is tremendously important. So we very much rely on those one-on-one connections. And again, we love surveys. We track our cases in Salesforce, so we're really working on getting all that information into our system so that we can, again, leverage all this lovely technology that we have now. But getting that feedback is just absolutely invaluable.
Great. And then just more of a fun fact digression. Speaking of NurseRegistry, Melissa, you shared with me the concept of where the name of the organization came from, and something that existed in cities before maybe I was alive or any of us were alive. So can you share a bit more about what a nurse registry was? way back when?
So a nurse's registry actually has held places in the nurse career world for years and years and years, and it actually used to be much more common that this is how nurses would find career opportunities before hospital systems got so large in our country in the 50s and 60s. So prior to that, when people needed to hire a nurse, they would have a nurse's registry where they would go and say, you know, my older parent is ill and I need some help with a nurse to come and take care of them, or whatever the case might be. And so we've definitely seen kind of a full circle back to some of that, even with our giant healthcare systems that exist now that didn't 60 or 70 years ago. People are still wanting to find those layers of support where they need it.
Yep, cool. Great fun fact. So we touched on COVID just a little bit when we think about something dynamic that's occurring that we need to compensate for, or address, or deal with. And in our earlier discussion, I asked both of you individually, what's surprised you most in your experience at your respective organizations? And the first word out of both of your mouths were COVID or pandemic. So that's an obvious place to start. But generally, when you think about what surprised you in experience, you know, David, what has been surprising for you? And then the kind of counter to that is, how have you learned to address that or accommodate those changes in your day-to-day operating rhythm?
Yeah, certainly we needed, it was a roll up your sleeves and do what it takes to keep people alive, right? Keep your workers safe. And because we were in such a serious, and still are, environment, what was refreshing to see some of the, you know, what could take years sometimes to get things through the red tape from a, you know, from a reimbursement or a regulatory environment. We saw things more quickly progress, and that was refreshing, certainly, as we were trying to respond to the crisis that was in front of us. And so, again, you know, home health, oftentimes things are sort of measured in decades, and things change very slowly. But what we started to see is an acceleration of change and adoption, and we're just hoping that those changes will stay around for a while, and then that ongoing sort of commitment to how do we respond more effectively to really the needs that are in front of us, specifically around patient care. One example of that, again, is sort of telehealth and telemonitoring and use of virtual types of technologies to reach the patient when sometimes you can't physically be there, and providing that safety net for the patients where otherwise they may not have something like that. So that's been an opportunity for our organization to really reach into technology to really address the need, and having some of that regulatory barrier removed and allow us to again deliver better care through a platform like telemonitoring, telehealth.
Sure, makes complete sense to me. And then for you, Melissa, what has surprised you at your time in NurseRegistry?
Well, again, clearly the pandemic has been a curveball for everybody. It's, you know, again, it's played out so differently with private individuals and with institutions. You know, there were times when we were getting calls from activities directors at skilled nursing facilities because they had no nursing staff. Things were dire for a minute there. And then again, looking how we can still continue to support those clients and not send our nurses into unduly difficult situations. And again, supporting our private duty patients who are now laying out parameters for their nurses that they've never had to think about before. So really taking them through those steps, you know, okay, you want to hire a private nurse, let's talk about this, because it's, you know, again, gig economy, this nurse is probably doing this in addition to his or her other job. Do you want a nurse who's been in a hospital setting recently? Do you want a nurse who's been in a skilled nursing facility setting recently? And oftentimes those answers are no because of exposure. And so our nursing pool shrunk very quickly. And so again, it just all comes back to how do we support our clients with these new parameters that we're working within, and how do we support our nurses as well? Because part of our mantra through the pandemic became the plastic barrier at Target is there to protect the cashier as much as it is the shopper. So nurses need to be heard and respected as far as their wishes, even when it comes to working with private duty clients who don't, who may not want to wear a mask in their own home. So again, supporting these nurses in their total autonomy, since they work with us, nurses work under their own license and they have to account for whatever their actions and behaviors are. So if they're in a situation that makes them uncomfortable, again, entrepreneurial spirit, they need to be able to speak up and tell clients that. And it was a huge challenge navigating that through the pandemic. But I think that we did it really successfully. I think we were able to maintain our nurses' integrity in those situations, and again, help make our clients feel as safe as possible.
Terrific. That's terrific to hear. And it's funny you said the word autonomy. That keeps coming up in conversations we've been having, not just in the healthcare space, but in everything from utilities and energy, real estate, construction, nonprofit, you name it. And this idea that folks out in the field should have a level of autonomy and influence over their day-to-day. And it's something as dire as they feel uncomfortable and they feel like they're being exposed to unnecessary risk in the field, to something as commonplace as, if there's a little too much traffic, or maybe we should reroute jobs. And that's another opportunity to look to technology to afford them that level of autonomy. And then through communication capabilities, through automation capabilities, you can supplement or complement their ability to make decisions in real time in the field. So I appreciate the use of that word. And then one question I had for you, Melissa, specifically was, what do you think you've learned that people in the home healthcare space may be shocked to discover or could benefit from because you have kind of an adjacent perspective?
Gosh, I don't know if there's anything that's shocking that I could reveal. I think maybe just the most illuminating thing, again, is just the concept of there being layers of support that are outside of the traditional box that you might think of. I think that a lot of people get very, very frustrated and think that they're stuck in a certain like, oh, well, my goodness, my home health nurse is only going to be coming 3 days a week, and I just don't feel comfortable doing this treatment on my own. I guess I have to go to a skilled nursing facility. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. If you can connect with a private nurse, and again, whether it's through a nurse's registry, whether, however you're connecting with a private nurse, that's an option. You can have a nurse come and help you with things and be able to stay in the environment that you want to. Again, if you need a higher level of care and it's able to be done at home, that can be really life-changing for some people, just to give them a little bit more breathing room and still have their wishes met and be where they want to be.
Yep, that was certainly illuminating for me to learn. As someone with aging parents and as someone who's also occasionally prone to injury and may need some supplemental care once in a while post a surgery or post a traumatic injury, that was good to know. So I definitely stuck that in the back of my mind. And then just to close out, David, any other thoughts you have, whether it's what's on the horizon for your organization, for you, what's top of mind at this particular juncture as we look to head into the back half of 2021?
No, I think, what I mentioned about COVID and some of the acceleration of change, certainly, that's a trajectory that I'm hopeful that our industry will continue to drive, and that it would be accepted from whether it's the payer area or otherwise. So certainly that's a piece of that. But again, as Melissa has mentioned, I think, how do we foster and create environments for these workers that attracts them, and then that they can grow and thrive in a way that really speaks to what their goals and their interests are. And I think, again, the winning organizations are going to be the ones that figure out that, right, and are able to sustain that for the long haul. So I think that's, again, an ongoing, just as I mentioned, the top priority for both of our organizations. It's going to be one that will really drive success in the future.
Yep. It may be a strange analogy, but I actually think about musical instruments a lot in this case. So when you have a string vibrating, if you think of a stringed instrument, at best, the instrument can rob less of the tone. it can get in the way less, essentially, because you'll pluck a stringed instrument, it will vibrate, and the best instruments aren't adding anything, they're just subtracting less, if that makes any sense. So I think, a good guitar will ring for 20 seconds or 40 seconds. A bad guitar will ring for 5 seconds. It's dampening, the materials are dampening the natural vibration of the string for the energy put in. And I think the same thing about the care equation, essentially, where you want to facilitate workers to provide as much of their energy as possible into the care they're providing, and not the logistical minutiae of getting to the job site or executing the work or viewing patient details or tracking records after the fact. So you emphasize the importance of essentially like getting out of the way or abstracting all of that complexity so care can just be provided. That's, you're letting the string vibrate more, essentially, or you're subtracting less. That's what I keep coming back to. So strange analogies aside, Melissa, Horizon, balance of 2021, top of mind for you, anything to close us out?
Again, we're making tracks with our big software pushes that we're working on now. So I'm really, really hopeful that we'll be able to take the support that we've always provided to our clients and nurses and really just kick it up and provide them with the awesome tools that that we've brought on through Skedulo. I can't wait to see how that's going to change their experience and make it better for them. So we're really, really looking forward to that. Again, coming out of the pandemic, the nursing pool has shrunk. A lot of nurses have left the profession, and it's just, again, we really need to flex our muscles as far as finding opportunities for these nurses that fit where they want to be in this moment. And I think we have a great opportunity to do that.
Terrific. A good note to end on. So I'd like to thank you, Melissa and David, for joining us today. And for folks interested in learning more, both NurseRegistry and AccentCare have terrific websites, really interesting organizations. Of course, I tried to make this very much not about Skedulo, but should you be interested in learning more, skedulo.com, SKEDULO. We'll, of course, follow up with individuals that attended. And I'd like to hand it back to Andrew.
Thank you guys so much, David, Melissa, and Michael. That was fantastic. It looks like that you guys answered all the questions that the audience did have. So I think this is a good place to wrap up. Thank you for everyone that listened in, either live or afterwards. And just a quick reminder that we will have all the audio again for all the registered attendees. And of course, a big thanks to Skedulo, the sponsor of today's webinar, and to the panelists again. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.